Sí, gracias señora Matsek y gracias a toda la delegación de Bursa. Bueno, esta mañana hemos sido testigos del verdadero espíritu de la ruta de la seda, el mercadeo, el comercio, el trabajo con las comunidades. Y como digo, la ruta de la seda sigue viva. Ahora, otro aspecto de la ruta de la seda, el diálogo entre culturas. Ha llegado la hora de las preguntas. Preguntas de la sala y, bueno, no sé si yo puedo hacer preguntas. Durante las ponencias de ayer y de hoy me han venido muchas cuestiones a la mente, como el comercio justo, por ejemplo, la mano de obra, el papel de los seres humanos en este sentido, cuestiones que quizá podamos abordar ahora en el debate o en el Congreso. Sí, estoy hablando en inglés, no me he dado cuenta. ¿Preguntas? Hello, I don't know if you would be able to answer my question since you come from Portugal, or maybe Professor Frank. I would like to know when Portugal imported silk and silk fabrics from China, was there a particular market with a Western taste, or were Chinese style fabrics bought? Well, as far as I know, we need to take into account the influence of Chinese models in Europe in the 18th century, particularly. Some clothing items became fashionable in Europe, coming from the Orient. Orientalized designs in fashion were particularly popular in the 18th century, so the influence was huge. The West world was absolutely fascinated with, but what things that came from Goa in La India was also based on the Portuguese. If you know, times we are highly designed by Europeans. So indeed, things were sort of tailored in certain areas. I don't know about silk. Well, particularly in Portugal, we can speak about the Indian Portuguese style, even with furniture. It's a bit of a mix, but the blending of cultures with globalization, exchanges back and forth. With silk, there are many silk fabrics in Portugal with Orient patterns and motifs, or table cloths too, from Asia with Portuguese motifs or patterns. So I'm sure there were orders being placed, tailored orders placed. I have a question about the productive fabric of silk, not only as regards museums. In the network of museums, how would you make room for existing workshops now? Workshops which are no longer active, but workshops which guard some heritage, of course, smaller workshops, but they do have some heritage there. I'm asking this question because with the last speaker from Turkey, I saw some interest. I thought it could be interesting to explain to the city's productive fabric the project about the museums, the museum project. So have you thought about this? Will you include them? Have you thought about this possibility? Could it contribute something to the museum, to the Silk Museum project? The fact that existing facilities or existing workshops could be integrated too, somehow. I will answer you as the scientific coordinator of the Silk Museum. Well, the experiences we've seen so far today and yesterday about other museums, well, we've seen, how they have an action-oriented vocation. In Valencia's Silk Museum, one of the first subjects we addressed, and one of our goals was to be able to have a proactive attitude, not only as regards silk heritage, but as regards the city's general heritage. We believe a museum today needs to be one more part in the puzzle, in the jigsaw puzzle of the region. I'll give you some examples. We are in contact with other institutions in the city that may cooperate with us. For example, sacred collections of the Archbishop at the cathedral, the liturgy collections there. It's important to cooperate with a potential cathedral museum, or cooperation has also been forged with some craftsmen, such as the silk dyers. We contacted them. Bear in mind, the Silk Art School of Valencia consists of entrepreneurs operating in the silk sector who were in the 1970s. They were responsible for the textile industry. They represented silk factories, textile factories. So the connections are there. We have the space, the spaces, the venue. If you have noticed, some museums have room, a lot of space for this in other countries. But since we are only a newcomer, we are getting there slowly with the goal of not only with the silk exchange in Valencia, but also with this museum, with Movim. In fact, some cities have whole districts with museums, Amsterdam, Berlin. We would like to do that too. As regards specific businesses and companies, the best connection is that with Fallas, the Valencian festivity, the fiesta of Valencia, all around the region of Valencia. So that is indeed a good opportunity for our museum in one of its many sites to forge such links. Of course, we thought about it, and that's what it is all about in the future. It is based on teamwork. I said at the beginning of the conference, in saying that, I meant we have to cooperate with other museums. We saw it with Bursa Museum and the network of museums there, which is not our Valencian system of public or state museums. The Silk Museum of Valencia is a private museum, so our goal, but we are now in a public museum, which is a neighbor to the Silk Museum, so we want to come together and partner up, trying to get in touch with the whole region and the productive fabric that you mentioned, the productive facilities, because silk is used here in companies, in traditional workshops, and that needs to be preserved. And, well, silk is a lot more than silk. There are many associated businesses, ribbon making, lace making, the so-called minor arts. Well, they're called minor, but in actual fact, they are major because they're very important in the history of silk. Braiding, ribbons, laces, etc. So that we bear in mind. It's a must for us. I was really struck by the fact that we've seen several silk museums so far that make links with contemporary art, and that to me is so very interesting. Visual artists working with textiles, working with silk, preparing installations or exhibitions, as if we were, or we could be an art museum. We are art museums, aren't we? Art textiles art in the intervention we saw. I was really struck, by that link, silk and a fine arts museum. We could do both. We could be a fine arts museum. We could be a contemporary art museum. It only takes an open mind. Of course, we are an art. We are not, though, a lost medieval art. Yesterday, we talked about natural science museums, namely the Murcia Sericulture Station, fascinating experience. But we need time, though. We are still small staff, small team, and bear in mind we are a private body. We don't get automatic funding or grants from the state. Our museum is self-sufficient. We have more than 40,000 visitors per year. We get the funding from there. We do a big campaign to attract visitors. We don't run on huge automatic grants from the state. So there is indeed another way of dealing with things. Piano, as Italians say, slowly but surely. Well, I'm happy to hear that. We will get in touch with you. Well, so far, I didn't get the time to concentrate on this because over the past few years, I was really busy with just, helping my workshop survive. It was going to be closed down because it was going to be demolished for a square to be built on site. We've been lucky enough to prevent the workshop from being demolished. And now, however, I have a bigger problem. What do I do with my workshop? Well, first things first. Don't lose your textile archive and your machinery, and the contents, of course, the artifacts and the objects. Don't get rid of anything, okay? Call whoever you need to call. We'll get there. We'll go there to preserve your heritage. I've been keeping it for the past 25 years. And I'll tell you what, I've gone through really bad patches. Now we are okay, but the problem is, what do I do next? What do I do with the workshop? We'll let you know. We can give you some advice, but please don't get rid of it. No way, I will not. With all ancient written papers and documents, society and people think, yes, that needs to be preserved. But for ancient textiles, the attitude is not there for preservation. Yeah, people don't even think about it, and it takes some awareness raising. Yes, unfortunately, many things have gone missing already, exactly because there was not, the awareness wasn't there. And the same goes for technology, ancient textile technology and machines. Okay, I will get in touch with you then. I have a couple of questions. For the books, do you still manufacture in Bursa, not for sampling purposes, not as museum samples? Do you still manufacture silk fabrics in Bursa? Are there industries there, factories that produce fabrics for sale? Or is it just, heritage? Sí. Ahora, el municipio de Boca, en la que fabricamos a nivel industrial, que quizás sea su pregunta, quizá mis colegas me pueden informar. De textiles más modernas. To what you said, 400 kilos. You can do a lot of fabric with that, a lot of cloth, but is it tapestry, carpets? That's why I was asking what type of fabrics or textiles. Question number two. Spinning, silk spinning, yarn. Do you produce yarn and you sell it, or is it just for heritage purpose? Do you sell the yarn? Unidos. Estos regalos y bueno, es una manera también de mejorar los salarios de las personas que trabajan. Thank you very much. Good morning. My question is to Germán. I am a member of the Valencian Silk Art School. We don't have a lot of room for workshops, to deliver workshops. Do you think it would be possible for us to go and visit associations to do activities there and have workshops there instead of them or students coming to us to the school? Well, we've actually seen that in other museums, a museum outside the museum. But that takes trained professionals. You need trained professionals. Valencian Association of Museum Educators who specialized in teaching school children subjects. Let me explain. Teaching a child to breed silkworms doesn't take much specialization. Basically, technicians or technical people who know the technique. Having said so, you want to take into account the school children's age, and how do you put the school curriculum so that it becomes equivalent to activities or the so-called company placements programs in schools. Some high schools have difficulty in finding funding for this. So going out to the school needs some type of statutory implication. It will have the moment you can offer that, if a school has been happy with a workshop delivered on site, I tell you what, we would have a lot of visits to the museum back. Yes, I don't mean schools only. I'm talking about associations. Last year, in fact, I was lucky to participate and work with women on the fringes of society. We did a little workshop there with them, very simple, very basic. I explained to these women the history of silk, the history of the district, the neighborhood. I taught them, I showed them different silk textiles and fabrics. And in the workshop, they had to mend and they had to sew, like money, purses, small bags. That's what I mean. Smaller workshops, simple workshops. We can do bigger projects. Very good. But I was actually referring to this type of small activities. I would like to give the floor to the president of INSER, because what we are discussing now requires us all to acknowledge that the educational dimension of a museum is always more important.
But she, as an expert, will have an opinion, and I would like to know what's her opinion, to see her point of view, because we are comparing museums here. The key word here is comparison. So I would like to have her opinion. Germán, yes, thank you very much for your question. Specifically, the role of non-formal education and also formal education, and how can we offer this knowledge to the community and to other associations, or for instance, association for the elderly or vulnerable population association. So within the INSEA, we have many projects. Sometimes are projects funded by the government, by foundations. And we see that there are artists and educators who are working, making workshops for non-formal centers of education. And we see that this is a trend. Well, I'm a psychologist, so I think that it is very important to take and to offer this knowledge to this kind of population that has no access to formal education. Yes, and I think that our colleague from Busa said that they had workshops with, and they have Roma people. And so we are trying to involve this population which are marginalized, and art is a wonderful means of inclusion. Well, a challenge for my museum now. Sorry for the interruption. The floor is yours. Muchas gracias por las presentaciones tan interesantes. Una combinación de una vista del estado en la época medieval y el estado en la época actual en Portugal y España, y este caso tan interesante de su museo. Tengo una pregunta para Nino Cotorga respecto a su museo. Y en esta conferencia específicamente, ¿puede decirnos un poco más sobre la situación de los archivos de su museo, porque deben tener ustedes una increíble cantidad de datos y de maquinaria. Y me pregunto, ¿quieren en el futuro digitalizar parte de ese material para que esté disponible a largo plazo para la comunidad internacional? Sé que hace 10 años, cuando era profesor de Historia Económica, eh, en la ciudad de Estocolmo teníamos el Instituto de la Bancarrota y creamos un modelo comparativo y fue un renacimiento de un tema que muy pocos conocían. Así que me gustaría saber unos fondos y colecciones de seda digitalizados en una plataforma en el futuro para compartirlo, porque me imagino que tendrán ustedes un material interesantísimo. ¿Podría decirnos algo al respecto, por favor? Gracias. Gracias por su pregunta, porque para mí ha sido difícil preparar todos estos materiales para la charla que he dado hoy. Así que podría centrarme, desde luego, en la digitalización de nuestros materiales, sedas, libros, documentos, archivos. Así que tengo que decir que mi equipo es joven y tienen conocimientos. Se está centrando están intentando hacer profesional, pero saben que durante el periodo soviético todo cambió mucho. Los museos y la biblioteca se utilizaron solo para hacer una muestra y no trabajaban un día. Así que cuando llegamos al museo, entramos en 2007, vimos que sí, es un museo, pero nunca había les importaban mucho los objetos antiguos, por eso tenemos tantos objetos. Pero fue muy fácil empezar en cuanto a la restauración y conservación. La realización de todo esto era uno de nuestros de una forma adecuada. Que trabajamos en Georgia y con muchos hacernos nuevo conocimiento, y el Ministerio de Cultura exigió a distintos museos, no solo el Museo de la Seda, y eligieron como de empezar con la digitalización. Hemos trabajado, por ejemplo, tenemos los materiales y tenemos una buena biblioteca. Me gustaría decir que el año que viene, el 2019, vamos a participar en un proyecto creativo europeo. Yo estoy también muy... Participamos en esta competición y junto con la República Checa, España, y me gusta mucho de tanto, que muchísimas gracias por su pregunta. Gracias a todos. If there are no further questions, we'll have a summary conclusion for this panel, which has been wonderful. From Nino, contribution, tablets, and contemporary art in the museums, the work they carry out with the community, Akin as well, the history from the sericulture station from Tiblitz, and also the interesting story from the museums from Bursa and how they work with the communities, and also renovating art and silk technology, promoting this technology. And I think it's such an inspiring model for some other countries. For instance, it was also mentioned the different links, and Herman was mentioning we have to connect with the community. We have to connect with the craftsmen, with the workshops, with the archives in cathedrals, archives in the different museums. A museum is not a building. The museum is a neighborhood. It's a city. So I think that also with the history of silk in Portugal and Spain, so I think that this panel has gave us food for thought. Lots of food for thought. So let's think about it, because there are so many questions that we could ask. And the examples had been amazing. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you, Germán. Thank you, Nino. Thank you, Nassim. And thank you to all the teams which are behind them. Thank you so much.